Hey everyone, Yan and Joe back again, starting the week of too many streams. We have the sweetest of casts, Clint Stoker.
Hey, great to be on with you again. It's been not too long. It doesn't feel like that long, but maybe
I
it
think he
has
came
been
out in January, but it's
January.
been
Okay,
about 6 months, yeah.
a little while, yeah.
So it's been a very boring week in the comics world.
Naturally, yeah.
So you've been doing a lot of different videos on your channel recently, and the first note I had for questions is dirty sodas. Why?
So honestly, that came up because it just came up in the news. And so I was streaming with Eric Weathers, and he brought it up. He brought up the news report. So I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess it's just a thing here. I knew it was a Utah specific thing, but I don't really think much about it because I'm not personally, it's not really my thing. But the more I looked into it, it's like, wow, they're actually incredibly popular here. So yeah, honestly, Shane is one that had a lot of curiosity in it. So he kept encouraging me to make dirty soda videos. So I have two technically, and that'll probably be it. No more.
Okay, I had a lot of questions because it kind of threw me for a loop because Utah is kind of Mormon central, and I've had
Yep.
a lot of Mormon friends over the years who are like, no, we're absolutely not drinking anything with caffeine in it. So normally I would think that sort of eliminates all sodas. But how long has this been a thing? Like, did they have
Yeah.
dirty sodas when you were a kid?
Yeah. So no, they didn't have dirty sodas when I was a kid.
Ah.
The caffeine thing is kind of interesting because there's definitely there's a religious doctrinal element,
Mhm.
and then there's also a cultural element. So the religious element, if you're interested in this, because that's what all this stems from, is that the way that it's worded in what we call the word of wisdom is no
Mhm.
hot drinks. And so hot drinks is interpreted as coffee and tea.
Oh, okay.
But like that's the doctrine. So now from there you have then the question of, well, what about hot chocolate? Because that's a hot drink, but it's not coffee and tea, which is technically the doctrine. So it's a consensus. So yeah, everyone drinks hot cocoa. That doesn't seem to be a problem. Where the problem comes in, where there's some division, is when it comes to soda. So do you drink caffeinated soda, or is it only caffeine free? And that's basically split. I wouldn't even know what the percentage is, but I don't have a problem with drinking soda with caffeine in it. And I'm pretty active member of the church. I do know people, my parents for one, it's generally like I think more of a generational thing. They don't drink soda with caffeine in it, period. Um, but that can change. Anyway, having said that, that's a long roundabout way. Here there is, if there was a vice for Utah, it would be sugar. Because there are, again, that stems all from religion here, but sugar is like, it just is. Like there's nothing written about it or anything like that as far as doctrine goes. So that is a problem. So a lot of people get their sugar fix with soda. And these dirty soda places are more just like, you want to go somewhere and have a mixed drink, but have non-alcoholic mixed drinks. And so it's more of a social
Okay.
thing. It's more of a, you know, so it kind of fits this little niche that that alcohol would. And there's still plenty of alcohol here, but I don't know, it's just this very specific niche, but it's becoming extremely popular. It's a long
Okay.
answer.
Yeah, that was interesting because when you were there, and the first thing I thought was, my God, this seems like what frat guys do with alcohol on college
Yep.
campuses.
Yeah.
All
Exactly. Yeah.
right. And I was really curious too because my grandmother used to mix chocolate syrup into Pepsi or Coke, and she used to mix peanut butter into it.
Oh,
And sometimes she would put, yeah, and sometimes she would put milk in there. And to me, it was always like a hillbilly thing.
Yeah.
But she told me like, oh, this is left over from when she was a kid in the 30s and 40s. You would go to like a soda fountain and they would
Yeah.
just mix in whatever stuff you wanted.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like, yeah, go into an old-timey, like, soda jerk, kinda
Yeah,
kinda
yeah.
place, and so, yeah, there's elements of that, but even then, like, I've been in 2 dirty soda places now, and, they don't really have, like, a lot of seating and stuff. There's some, but it's not really a social atmosphere. Most of the time, you're going through the drive-through, or
Hmm.
you're just running in and grabbing it and going and bringing it home. So
Okay.
I don't completely understand it. It's not really for me.
All right. Yeah, I was wondering, and do they have boba out there? Now, boba would be tea, where they brand it as tea.
Oh
Let's put it
yeah.
that way.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
just
So that's picking up there too?
yeah, there's I mean there's tea, there's coffee, all that kind of stuff is here. Boba, I think I've heard of it. I don't drink coffee or tea. And so I don't know a lot about it, but I'm gonna say I've heard of it, so I'm assuming that it is here.
Let's see. Thai Ranger. My dad went to BYU, and for a year he said finding coffee was nearly impossible, which didn't help him stay awake during the 7:30 a.m. mandatory Book of Mormon class.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, I don't know how long ago that was, but so Provo is sort of the epicenter. That's where
Hmm.
BYU is at, and it's like got to be up above 90% LDS population there. And as you move out, it varies. I live in West Valley City, which is a far more diverse city, and
Hmm.
so it's like we're majority minority here, and the demographics are shifting pretty quickly. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Times have changed though for sure. I'm guessing if your dad went there, it was probably a while ago. I'm just gonna guess, but
All right. And after your last video with the flaming hot Cheetos, um, I believe right, you had flaming hot Cheetos in there with
flaming hot Mountain Dew.
yes,
Yeah.
flaming hot Mountain Dew. That's what it was. Sorry. Um, are these used by like teenagers as like punishments? Like, you screwed up, you have to drink the flaming hot Mountain Dew, or
Ah, man, that's the first time I've had it. I had heard that it's around, so I had to look around because I knew I wanted to make a dirty soda out of it, and
Mhm.
yeah, it was awful. I don't know how anyone drinks that unironically. Like to me, it's like those every flavor beans, that taste like vomit and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
To me, it's just like that same category. It's awful.
Okay. Yeah. I had a friend in school who every time he got like a bad crit on his art pieces, he would force himself to drink cranberry juice because he absolutely hated it. But he was also the guy who thought that Mountain Dew was a good form of birth control.
That probably didn't work out very well for him then.
No, actually, it was fantastic. So this guy would drink somewhere between 12 and 24 cans of Mountain Dew per day.
Oh my gosh.
He became so fat and his skin was so bad, no woman ever wanted to go near him. So in
So
effect,
it did
he
work.
never got anyone pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
Mountain
That's
Dew.
that's awful. Yeah, I see Chris Fisk is saying caffeine's a toxin at high levels. And it's astounding that we have no FDA regulations that label caffeine content in products. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely overdo it on caffeine. I'm not like
Hmm.
I've really cut back. I don't drink caffeine that often. It maybe ends up being maybe once a week, something like that. Um, I don't know. I think I don't know. It's a good thing not to drink tons of caffeine.
So yeah, yellow 5, a component in Mountain Dew will sterilize you. Yeah, that was actually the thing. This was back in the 90s, and
Uh-huh.
there was a study that said Mountain Dew consumption sterilized rats, male rats.
Yeah.
So that's where he got that idea. I mean, I guess,
Yeah. I mean,
you
I've
know,
heard people would say like it lowers your sperm count. I remember that in junior
yeah,
high.
yeah.
People would always talk about that, but I don't know. Can't confirm.
I think that was the first time anyone ever used that as a positive.
Yeah. That's true.
So I had another question too. It was a few weeks or a couple months back. You posted a link to yourself doing a crypto show, and I
Yeah.
don't know why that kind of threw me for a loop. Like you're a comic guy, you can't have more interests. So how did you get into crypto?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna oversell it. I'm not massively into crypto, but what happened is I changed jobs and I work around a lot of small business owners now and
Oh,
entrepreneurs. And I was talking with some of those guys, and they're like, "Hey, we want to get into NFTs and start, exploring and everything." And but we got to promote it. And I said, "Well, I have a YouTube channel, we could try. Let's just little experiment here and just see if there's market growth. You know what I mean? If we could grow a
hmm,
YouTube channel." And so we committed to it. We were doing videos, I mean, a few months probably, videos, mostly every day. And it was so rough. That is a tough space to grow a YouTube channel. And I think partially
yeah,
just because it's so competitive. But yeah, it's actually been a week since we've posted videos, and we kind of reconvened and we're like, should we keep doing this? Uh, makes me feel better about my comics YouTube channel because we couldn't crack. I mean, the most views I think we got on a video was like 30. So
hmm,
it's a tough area, but
yeah.
yeah, nice experiment. We'll see if that works, but or like if we're gonna continue the YouTube. But it's interesting though because they found growth in Twitter for NFTs, which is interesting, like
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
legitimate serious growth. So I don't know, we'll see.
So, kind of bringing it around to comics, have you seen Fractured or the ad so far for Fractured? Comic by Rod Looper
Oh,
and Aaron Bennett. It's going to launch on the 20th.
I
Pretty
don't think
interesting.
so.
And I can't remember, it's if you sign up for their, what's the word I'm
The
thinking of? The
pre-launch
marketing
page.
pre-launch page. You have a chance to win one of 5 NFTs from the comic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was really curious. We were looking at ways of how you would connect that into a comic book NFTs. I
Hmm.
did a few polls and stuff, and most people far and wide that responded to the poll were like, no, we don't want anything to do with NFTs. So I don't know. Like it's interesting. There's some overlap, but I don't think a lot.
Yeah, I think it's tough because to me, in the comics world, you want that original physical piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
And like if you're paying extra for commissions, you want something that you can hang up or show other people, something that's physical. And I can see like the digital PDF sales, but that's more like people who just want a story.
Yeah.
Whereas, as far as I know, with the NFTs, it's just an image. It's not like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess couldn't it be like a PDF, like a
It
book type thing?
honestly, it can be almost anything, but the way I think about it, is that it's a contract. So most NFTs that you know about and that are famous and selling for lots of money, they are essentially a piece of paper with an image on it, and it's really just symbolic of, crypto basically.
Hmm.
But the reality is, and this is where I think NFTs are interesting, is you can make it something else. Like because it's a contract, that's the interesting part of the technology. You could, for instance, buy a deed to a home. You could buy a
Hmm.
house and have the deed be an NFT, and that way it would verify like that you completely own it.
Oh,
I mean,
huh.
that's at a very like more understandable level, but when you start getting into like the metaverse and buying property online and things, you can see how NFTs would be more useful. So right now, I don't think that there's a lot of ways that NFTs are have been made practical and that they demonstrate their value, like but beyond the image or the collectability. But it's gonna happen, I think, soon. People are
Hmm.
already starting to work on it. So as soon as somebody comes up with a great idea, I think you'll start to see NFTs that have value beyond collectability. Will have nothing to do with it. So
Interesting. Do you think that maybe in the future we'll see that integrated in the comics industry? more like, get trading cards, like they'd be serialized trading cards, or years ago, the Wu-Tang Clan made one album. Like they made an album and they only sold one copy or digital copy
Yeah.
of it. Can you see things like that maybe in the comic industry in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. The video game market has already figured out ways to do it. The Square Enix Final Fantasy company, they're leaning so heavily. They sold off Tomb Raider. They sold off
Hmm.
a ton of IP to raise money just to lean into making NFTs part of their game. And
Huh.
I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do it, but their CEO is saying that it would be ways that you could participate in building the game essentially.
Hmm.
So again, I'm not sure exactly how that would work out, but for comics, I don't know. I'm yet to see. I try to look at it from perspective of a comics buyer. What would I want an NFT for? I just love print comics so much that I things would have to drastically change for me to really want for an NFT to have value to me within the world of comics. So
Yeah, I mean, I could really only see it as sort of like an add-on, sort of like they're doing with Fractured. Um, or if it was like you buy the NFT and I'll throw in a print version,
mhm. Yeah,
something like that.
yeah. Maybe you buy the original artwork and you get an NFT also, or if it's just digital, you buy the page and it is an NFT. That says you're
Hmm.
the one that owns that page. That would make it more valuable. I mean, it'd be something, but I don't know if it'd catch on. It's hard to
Yeah,
know.
and I do wonder if that's another way for artists to make money because traditionally, if you drew, in pencil and then in ink, you could then sell that at an auction, eBay, Red Valkyrie's channel, wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
And if you're drawing digitally, like on your iPad or whatever, and you can make an NFT of that, would that then be about as valuable as like an original drawn in pencil work?
It could be. I mean, it could even be more valuable, which is, I mean, because if you think about it, we get these pixelated images that are worth tons of money, and
Hmm.
really value is it's just what somebody's willing to pay for it. But the interesting thing is that when it's on open seas, for example, where they're buying and selling NFTs, if you already have money in cryptocurrency and it's like you're moving money around, there's actually value to it being there. So I can see an argument for it being more valuable in that there are more people that might want to buy it there versus a individual person that wants to buy an original page from you. Again, though, I haven't seen it really done on a large scale to know for certain how it would go. I think it would take somebody, um, you know, well-known artists with a big following,
Yeah, yeah,
specifically
yeah.
that are interested in NFTs to like really demonstrate how it could work.
Yeah, it would have to be like a Todd McFarlane or Jim Lee or something like that.
Yeah, because even for them, there's only going to be a small percentage that are really interested in NFTs,
Yeah, that's
but
true.
they have a big enough following that they could probably do. I wouldn't surprise me if Todd McFarlane got into it. It would shock me if he didn't at some point dip his toe into it.
Probably, probably. Yeah, so Chris says, I honestly had to work up the word fungible because it sounded suspiciously cromulent. I think that's the biggest problem with all crypto and NFTs. Is it's kind of hard for a lot of people to wrap their heads around.
Yeah, and if you don't understand it, well, not only that, I mean, it took me a long time to get it, and I still don't. I'm not an expert at NFTs, even though I have been making YouTube's videos of it for a while.
Hmm.
Um, it's confusing, but it's also um, I don't know. You need at the end of the day, you have to have some kind of real world value. Like
Yeah,
what's the value? For it to make sense other than just flipping. Which right now it's primarily that's what it is. It's all just
sure.
trading money and trying to get rich.
Well, that's, I don't know, that's most things these days.
It's yeah, cryptocurrency too, and so and don't get me wrong, I own some cryptocurrency, which is
Ooh,
currently
I'm sorry.
diving, not a lot, but it is interesting.
Yeah, I had a coworker. He was like 28, and he was like, "I'm putting all my money into crypto." Did not,
Oh,
did not. His retirement and wedding fund are not going very well.
oh
Poor
no.
guy.
Oh no.
That's what happens. So, another thing, not too long ago, you said you're considering writing another novel.
Yeah.
So,
I have a great idea. Sorry, you have a question that goes along with
oh
that?
no, I was just gonna say, like, what brought back the novel itch as opposed to working in the comic space.
So well, a few things. So I started out writing novels, and there is 100% creative control. So that's fun. Like to be able to have just like your vision, you know.
Mm,
There are definitely some shortcomings that comics are better at, and they satisfy that need for the art,
mhm,
visual aesthetic. But I have this idea that's big, and I don't know how else I would do the idea other than a long comic book series, which it was not necessarily off the table, but it would just really lend itself to a novel because while a picture is worth 1,000 words, you know, a novel is worth 60,000 to 100,000 words. So it's just, there's just a lot that you can do in a novel as far as storytelling goes. So I don't know. Right now, it's not something I'm actively writing. I've been sort of loosely, very early on, loosely playing with concepts and things with it. But I have so much else that's on my plate that's more important than that.
mhm.
So if I start writing a novel, it would probably be this fall that I would just start, and it'll be a probably pretty slow going at first, just to see how my prose writing chops are. Um, but I don't know, it intrigues me. If I found the right artist and had enough confidence that I could do a long series, then I might take it to the comics world. It's pretty undecided right now, though. But at the very least, I know I could do a novel. Doesn't cost me anything but time. And I don't know, it's a possibility.
Hmm. Interesting. Is it back in the sci-fi realm, or you thinking of something new?
Yeah, it is sci-fi. I keep
There's nothing
thinking,
wrong with that.
no, there's not. I mean, it's still, I don't know what it is, but it really gets me thinking when I have these totally outlandish concepts. Actually, the more I got thinking about anime and how they have just these crazy off the wall creative ideas. And to me it's kind of like that. I don't even want to give anything away cuz the idea is so new, but it would hit the right notes, I think, for something I'd want to spend my time doing. I think it'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, it would still be the same kind of sci-fi meets post-apocalyptic world that I play with a lot. So
Okay, so not in the Downcast universe.
there would have to be some major, massive changes to Downcast for it to work. I mean, it could. I wouldn't rule it. I could think of some ways, but it would definitely be
Hmm.
like brand new story arc. You're starting a whole new event basically that's happening that really drastically changes things. So I wouldn't rule that out. It could be doable, but it would probably be a hefty story arc for it to work.
Hmm. Very interesting. Do you have any sort of like time frame for that, or is that sort of like the side project?
So the way that I like to handle my writing projects is I'll have basically degrees of ideas. So I have I have a lot of ideas that come up all the time. And if I think about it for a while, it's usually like I'm taking a shower and I'll think about it.
Hmm.
Usually I'll kind of decide, this idea is not that good, or it's like half baked. And so I kind of just put it back into the compost pile, so to speak. And sometimes I use components of it, or sometimes it'll just sit there forever. This is an idea that has kind of, it keeps coming back from the back burner, and so the more I think about it, I think I got to do something with this because I keep coming up with more concepts that work with it, and it is exciting to me. So it's one that I'm fairly certain I have to do. I'm just haven't decided how exactly I'm going to do it. Um, So it's lower on the priority list for sure. Downcast, I mean, after Dracula is out, I mean, creatively Dracula's finished. So it's a matter of, it's just getting the book out. Fatal, obviously, there are creative elements that because we're doing it Marvel method, so that is going to be 100% my focus as soon as I get those last few pages. It's 100% my focus, and I'll get that done. But I always have something that I'm working on next. So this idea it's got to be the next thing, because it just excites me more. For Downcast, I have that's obviously the priority too, because it's already in publication. So I do have the story loosely plotted out, and things planned for Downcast for basically finishing this story arc, the monster story arc, and then the next story arc. And if I can get that far, I'll be really happy. But it's not necessarily the end.
So, sorry, my mind just went blank. So in terms of Downcast, you were just mentioning timeline stuff. Do you have any more pressure now that you're also published by Alterna? I mean, I doubt Pete's putting the screws to you, but do you feel like, well, I got to have a certain amount out so I can get, a certain amount published by Alterna per year, or?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So yes, but it's not pressure from Peter or Alterna. Like, it's not publisher pressure, which is interesting, because if I said, hey, I just want to take a year off, Peter would be like, okay, like, it's not. So I'm not getting a big pull from him that I need to hit certain numbers. He's very much like, hey, you might need more time to get your book done, and that's okay. Like, don't rush it. However, because there are readers that are buying the books, especially through Alterna, where I've had this nice pace of every quarter putting out a new Alterna book, there's some pressure there in that I would like to just keep it going. You know what I mean? So that it's uninterrupted issues coming out. So that is a definite pressure. It's not massive, but just knowing that there's a readership that's steadily getting installments of Downcast, that makes me want to keep it going and hurry up. And thankfully, like, we've got the next book in process. So I don't know, we might miss a quarter or two with Alterna publications. We'll find out. It's still a little early to say.
All right, so now the topic du jour, Clint Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
So you're going back to the well. Obviously, you got the name value,
yeah,
which makes it work. But I'm kind of curious. Dracula was written in a Victorian era that was kind of like shocking to them for what at the time was considered like lascivious sexual activities. Now people would be like, "Oh, is that it?" So how do you take a classic monster like that but make it relative to the modern world?
Yeah, that was really challenging. So what I did is I looked at Dracula, what made him so shocking at the time and sort of like pushing the boundaries. And it was a very different time, so it didn't take nearly as much then to do that. But I kind of tried to look at what angles it kind of hit, and then translate that today. So, to me, to society today, I thought, you know what, Jeffrey Epstein is both. He's fascinating. Like, the more you learned about him, when all that was going down, but he's also like incredibly evil, incredibly powerful, and like he had the same predatory elements that I saw Dracula have. And so to me, I then translated that to, well, what's psychoanalyzed Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula, what is exactly his problem? Well, he's a vampire, but I think maybe he's analogous to a sociopath. And so what would a sociopath do today? Is that still disturbing to us? Yes. And so I kind of started there and did research in that realm. And tried to make Dracula predatory, controlling, and he would get very vengeful, and so sort of starting there and getting with those universal themes that were in the original Dracula, and then how do I translate that to the modern world? And I think that made it easier, or at least it made it logical to me from that perspective.
Ty Ranger wants to know, do vampires sparkle?
Not my vampires, but yeah, depending on which ones you're reading about.
Maybe Dracula when he goes to a rave.
Yeah.
Which, he might for victims.
He could, yeah. In this world, that's likely. Absolutely.
All right. So you've got art by Donald DeLay.
Yep.
And how was it working with Donald?
Donald's fantastic. This was one that we talked about it. It was over a year ago that we had agreed to do the book together, and I said, "Hey, well, I can't start until the fall. I got to get campaigns finished and sort of move it along my pipeline." And so he's like, "Yeah, let me know in the fall." So in the fall, that came around, and my goal was to get the book done ahead of time. So we're just finishing it. We're going to tell a story. We're not in a big rush, but we'll get it done. And then when it's finished, we launch the campaign. So Donald's fantastic. The way we did this was full script. So I wrote out everything. Obviously, the way I work is a little bit more hands off. Once I finish the script and turn it over to an artist, I try to really let them figure out what works. Unless it really is not working, then I'll come back for some changes. But for the most part, it was, hey, he's got the full script, and then he's doing his interpretation of the script. So Donald was great. He's really fast. It's a black and white book. It was interesting because at the beginning we were talking about how, what should the art style be like? And one of the reasons I chose Donald was because he's not really known for super realistic art. It's more stylized and cartoony. And so for him, this was more on the side of realistic, from what you typically see with Donald DeLay. But even then, it's still very stylized artwork. Then making it black and white, his idea to do the halftone patterns, which ended up being really cool, I think. So it reads really well, black and white. You can follow it quite well. And then he had a mixture of influences from different artists, from like Frank Miller, for example, with Sin City. You'll see little elements of that and kind of nods to Frank Miller's artwork. I honestly don't remember the list of artists that he kind of drew inspiration from, but to me, it's very recognizably Donald DeLay, but it's also a style that you haven't really seen him do. It's a different kind of corner of his style.
Have you ever had to threaten him with pineapples to get him back on course?
No, he honestly, he was so good. He got things done so quickly. We were joking about this on Twitter actually earlier. I think it was like December. He was like, I know I should be drawing today, but I want to go play the Switch with my son. Is that? And he was like asking me about, like, I'm his boss, and I'm just like, dude, man, like, go do it. Have fun with your kid, And so it was just fun. I don't know, it was just cool to see him treat it like a job. And like he's getting it done. I don't know. Yeah, he was great to work with. I'd absolutely work with Donald again on another book.
So Ty says, I'm tired of sexy vampire. So glad it doesn't sound like that. Plus, when you consider they're hundreds of years old going after people in their 20s, it's pretty creepy. But yeah, don't you want your vampire to be creepy? Like, isn't that part of the creepy factor?
Yeah, you want it to be creepy. I mean, he's not ugly. Like, we could have had Dracula be total, gray old man. So we didn't go that route. But he's still like, he's a predator. Like that's what he's based on. So he's definitely creepy and seductive, but not in like a Twilight way.
Yeah, not in a teenage lifeguard type of way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it seems like Dracula has to be somewhere like in his 30s or early 40s or something, because there's a certain amount of like gravitas that like a almost middle-aged man has, because still they're okay physically, but they've theoretically reached a level of success in their life
Yeah.
where they're able to afford finer things and to provide for a family and all that kind of stuff. And that seems like that should be part of the the lore or mystique, but just like amped up to the next level.
Yeah. I mean, he's rich. It's funny with comics because you usually think of first, the rich guy is like, it's like Bruce Wayne. He's a billionaire and he's a good guy. He uses his money and wealth and power for good. In this case, here's a guy that's using his money and wealth and power for evil. Yeah, not good. And that, to me, that's actually terrifying when you think about it. Someone with all these resources that they put into just manipulation, control, predatory behavior. Again, like, take it back to Jeffrey Epstein. It's like, what did the guy do for a living? It just seems like he spent all his time. The whole point was just to have power over people and be evil. And so to me, that's like, yeah, it's evil person, but with nearly unlimited resources. That's scary to me. So that's really the angle I went.
Yeah, now that you mention that, something I hadn't thought of before, but if you look at most comic books, especially the ones that are older, starting in the 30s with Bruce Wayne, all the millionaires, now we'd say billionaires, ended up being heroic, right? You got Bruce Wayne, Tony Stark, Danny Rand, all those kind of guys. But it's interesting that, the 30s were a time of like corrupt capital, not capitalists, but industrialists. And people in general hated them. And, especially with the 60s and, they hated the man, and the industrial complex was part of that. And those people started writing comics in the 80s and the 90s. You really don't see that translate into comics until, I guess, more recently in the last 5-7 years you start to see it. But yeah, it makes me wonder why you never, other than like in GI Joe Cobra, with like Destro or something, you don't really see that too much.
I wonder if it's a level of wish fulfillment. Like if you are a kid reading comic books, especially in the early days of comics, was it that, yeah, I wish I was rich because I would be, and if I was, I would be so good with it, like it would. So maybe it's a level of wish fulfillment for readers. I honestly have a hard time believing that it was political to start off with. You know what I mean? I don't think it had anything to do with race or excuse me, not race, with class warfare or anything like that. I think it would probably wish fulfillment was sort of the itch they were trying to scratch.
That's true. That's true. And I guess, the gangsters that we used to see a lot would have been rich.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and maybe they looked at super rich industrialists and they thought, man, if only I had that money, I would do it right. Like these guys are squandering it.
So Ty says, I thought Superman had bad guys that were rich. So Lex, he was rich. I guess that's true. Superman was the one I was thinking about, especially since they had to kind of tone him down, once you get into the 40s and 50s, because a lot of people thought he was like leaning towards communism.
Yeah.
So that's true. Yeah. So getting back into Dracula, how close to the original story is it? Is it like more or less just borrowing the main villain in the name, or is it kind of keeping to some of the structure but in modern time?
It's pretty different than the original Dracula. There are a few nods. I mean, John Harker is the protagonist. Dracula is the antagonist. John Harker's a lawyer. Dracula is mysterious and very wealthy, and so there are still those elements. but the plot is not at all the same. I don't honestly, I think the novel Dracula, like translate that into comic book form would take a lot of pages first off, but I mean it's already been done. Mike Mignola did it,
Mhm.
and so I don't know. To me, it just wasn't interesting to do the same thing. So wanted a brand new story, and just to sort of pretend like these are the building blocks I'm starting out with. How would I do it today? Um, and it really is because the title's Clint Stoker's Dracula. I was always worried about how people would approach it, and for me, it had to just be this is how I approach it. This is not the
Mhm.
Dracula. It's just here's a version that I'm going to do, for my time.
And so, at no point does Dracula become the hero of this story, or should we just stay tuned?
Um, he believes he's the hero. He believes what he does is necessary, and that
Mhm.
it's important. But I mean, from the reader's perspective, definitely not. He's not the good guy.
Well, thank you for that, first of all, because
Yeah,
I don't know, I'm just tired of something's gone wrong with the world where like people who go around murdering and sucking other people's blood and
yeah,
eventually it's like, oh no, I really want to do good things while
right,
I murder people on the side.
right, yeah, yeah. That's kind of overdone. I mean, it's I don't know. To me, for it to be a horror, have to have a good villain. He definitely
Hmm.
has a point of view. I think to me, it's a really interesting Dracula. Like he's just his history and how he would, uh, you know, basically justify himself. It makes perfect sense to him, but to John Harker, it's just, it's a nightmare. So, yeah, no, to me, he just has to be bad. Like that's just what he is.
All right. And so I liked another thing too, that the levels of backing were kind of simple.
Mhm.
Um, some campaigns confuse me with what exactly I'm getting, but this was easy to follow. So, why don't you just run us through real quick?
Yeah. So at the top here, this is the collector's bundle. This is everything. So you get cover A, cover B, T-shirt, PDF. You get the trading card set, which I have an image of below on it. And then you are also into the add-ons, so you can catch up on Downcast. You can get an extra trading card set or an extra T-shirt, whatever you want. But that's everything. So it's pretty. I mean, it's pretty slim, really. There's not a ton to this campaign. Access to add-ons, people just asked for that so that they could get in and just get to the add-ons and build their own bundle together. So that's what that is. Digital PDF. This is deluxe digital, so it comes with some extras. You have a cover gallery. I'm going to be adding more extras to this that will not be in the printed version. That's to sort of
Oh,
sweeten the deal. For people are paying $20 for a digital version, so it'll be deluxe. It'll have some extra stuff in it. Mainly for international backers. I'll be honest. That's always a sticking point.
out of curiosity, have a lot of people been asked? A lot of international backers been asking for more digital, or
On previous campaign launches, every launch, I would hear from probably two or three people, and they'd say, "No digital, like, come on, are you going to do digital?" And so it's not a lot of people, but as you can see here, I've got 10 people that backed it, and
Mhm.
I would bet that probably 9 out of 10 of those are international.
Yeah, yeah, it just seems so hard to get things across borders these days.
Yeah.
All right, so you've got cover A and cover
Cover A.
B.
Yep. So one by Kelsey Shannon. That's what cover A. Cover B is Eric Canetti. Both covers are just beautiful. I'm very fortunate to have those great artists be working on it.
All right, and
Then you get
then
both covers,
mhm,
and that's it. That's all there is. Simple.
nice. So I did have a little bit of a question about, at one time people were going crazy about stuffing the campaigns like different trading cards, and you're going to get a poster and a T-shirt, and like it's all going to be signed and this and that. has it seemed to you from the crowds that like, okay, maybe less swag
Yeah,
is more popular?
I think so. And part of it is just my own experience when I'm backing books, and you get all of these extra just printed items, and then I start thinking like, what do I do with all this? Because it starts piling up, and when I start throwing it away, I think people are throwing these away for sure. Like not everybody's keeping all this stuff. So I know that trading cards are more popular than most other printed items. Personally, I like bookmarks, but I get that a lot of people don't. So that one's like, stretch goal, which we did happen to hit on this. To me, is stickers okay, but the prints, they just don't typically do very well. And I think it's partially because where do you put them? So
Yeah.
trading cards just make more sense, I think, to most people.
Yeah, I think so too. That's actually why I never get on pre-launch mailing lists. Is because they always want to give me something with it. And I currently live in a very small house, and I do not have room for anything.
Yeah,
And I always feel bad when I throw this stuff out.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you got to be useful. That's part of it. Like I've got t-shirts on here. I've done a couple
Mhm.
t-shirts on campaigns, and usually they haven't, I don't know, sold terribly well. This one I reined it back though, so it's just the logo, and this is actually my best-selling t-shirt ever. So I think that's the way to go. Is like just have the logo, like no images, artworks that sort of cluttered up. Most people just want a logo on a t-shirt. So that's
Yeah.
the route I went there. But even then, I mean, t-shirts are useful. People like the trading card set, but I really tried to make the focus just the book.
Hmm. Um, so, recently a lot of people have been very sort of doom and gloom. It seems like in this country overall, we're headed down economically. And I saw you made a video recently about, you made several about the comics slash indie market in general. Um, you don't seem as pessimistic as some other people. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like you're already doing something like that's financially not a good idea. Traditionally speaking, making a comic book, I
yeah.
always find it funny when like new people are like, "Oh, I had no interest in comic books." Like this is a real email I will get. I've never read comic books and not interested in them, but I see that there's lots of money to be made. How do I start? Like, what do I do? And to me, that's like, I mean, there's a lot more money almost anywhere else but comics. Um, you can make sustainable comics and they make financial sense, absolutely. But if it's about the money for you, I mean, there's just other routes that are just a lot easier to make money. So if you're making comic books, there's some degree of faith that you're putting into it,
Hmm.
and to me, that's the way to do it. I don't want to, obviously within reason. I don't want to like do like a 120-page graphic novel fully complete out of my own pocket. I'm not ready to do that. But I think like with, I have a proven audience. Uh, it yet to be determined like what number that is that they're going to be sticking with me through hard times. But I figured, I think I have 300. I think I've got a core of 300 people that are going to be backing my stuff. So can I make comic books based off of 300 backers? Yes, I can. And I make some good comics based off of 300 backers. I'm always hoping for more than that, but I think even through the worst of times, I think I can find those 300 backers that are going to support my books. So that gives me confidence and faith. Now, let's say that it's really bad and there's a terrible recession, and I'm not able to like really raise enough money to make comics profitable. Well, that's okay then. I'm not going to take such massive risks that I'm going to jeopardize my family or my home or anything like that. So I just think that's the best outlook because no one really knows what's coming and
Hmm.
how it's going to affect comics. So it's business as usual, basically.
Okay. Yeah. I had John Hervey, Black Tiger fame, on not too long ago. And after we were talking just a little bit about the business of comics. Do you see it yourself, or do you think most people in the indie game sort of see it as I'm going to get rich now, or do you see it as sort of like a long-term investment, like I'm building a company, building a portfolio that, even though probably not really going to pay off in big money now, like over time?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good question, because I see a mixed bag of perspectives on that. I have yet to launch a campaign that was like, hey, this is just money for me. This is a cash
Mhm.
grab. I've never launched a book like that.
Sure.
Um, Even like a good example is Downcast 3, which I did last year. That book did very well. I mean, $46,000. But I sold out of volume ones. I don't have very many volume twos left right now. And it came down to, do I reprint volume one? Or like, what do I do? How do I handle this? And so I reprinted 1 and 2 together in one
Mhm.
larger collection. That was expensive to do, because it's a bigger book. I still made it the same quality. It has foil stamp, UV gloss, like the works. Like, it's a nice book, and I ordered 2,000 copies of it, even though that's based off 0 orders. Like, nobody had
Mhm.
asked for it, but I knew that I needed it. So to me, that was definitely a long-term thinking. I could have taken that $11,000 and just put it in my pocket. But to me, it was, hey, I'm building a series here, and I need to have books for people to get into it. Like, this is the starter book for it. So that, to me, that was just a major investment in Downcast as a series, because I have a fairly large story to tell. So in that aspect, it's not that I'm not making money. I've definitely made money on books, but I think it does affect your decision making for sure. And that's just one example. But even creatively, like, how am I gonna grow the audience, or business
Mhm.
decisions, like connecting with alternate. That was about reaching more people that would otherwise not be getting my books. Um, so a lot of it is definitely, you're trying to lay a foundation for a longer career. And again, it's just, I'm just trying to have faith in it, and plan for the long term.
Um, Yeah, and long term too. For me, one of the things I'm thinking is, maybe even 10 years it won't pan out, but you have all this IP that, like you said, you can reprint the volumes in other formats. You could, make part of the story part of an anthology. Like, once you've already paid for that initial investment up front, it's almost like printing money at some point, because you could be making money 30 years from now off the same thing. And not only that, but it's something that you could pass on to your kids with copyrighted
Yeah.
life plus 75 or 95. I mean, it's
Mhm.
something that they could have. Think of how many, like H.P. Lovecraft was popular, but was he as popular back then as he is now? Robert E. Howard was popular for the pulp fiction magazines that he wrote in, but was his work nearly as popular as it is in 2022? I mean, this stuff can grow over time, and if you already have that uh, back catalog,
Yeah.
it seems to me that the money is the the security money is down the road, not necessarily up front.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've said many times that you gotta. Why are not more people building IP? Like,
Hmm.
building out these stories, like doing a one and done story. Here I am promoting Dracula, which is like a one and done story. And I think that that's okay, but I think, yeah, the real value is, I mean, how can I build an IP out? Could you imagine if Star Wars was A New Hope and that's where it ended? I mean,
Yep,
it's a great movie, but where would Star Wars be if there was never another Star Wars film made?
that would
Eh,
just be something people who were teens in the 70s remembered.
Probably, yeah. And so to me, it's like, I have an opportunity here to do something awesome. Plan, again, long-term planning, but I hope that I have a nice body of work. And if for example, with Downcast, you're like, I want to get into Downcast. There's enough material there that you can enjoy it, you know, comics wise. There's enough to like really get into the series and have a lot of fun with it. So I don't know, I want it to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with other comic book series or mini series that I've enjoyed over the years. The Long Halloween, what's that? 12 issues.
Yep.
I mean, I haven't hit 12 issues yet. You know, even single alternate issues. I haven't hit that yet with Downcast, and so it's really these are still relatively short stories right now. So I don't know, I want to build it out and be able to compete in that area.
You know, and you just said something too, and you mentioned it briefly in your lightning round video, and this is something that I ask people all the time, and I get strange answers. Is reaching out to other sort of fandom communities. Do you see that as necessary to grow the pie? Especially, you know, we were talking about if the economy's going down, there's going to be less money that people in this core group of comic buyers have to spend. But to me, it seems like there's still plenty of money in other areas that just don't know about awesome indie comics yet.
I mean, it's kind of, I'll relate it back to the NFT discussion, because with that, is it easier to convince somebody that doesn't know anything about NFTs, maybe they have a little bit of interest, to convince them to purchase an NFT? Or is it easier to convince somebody that's already purchased NFTs to purchase your NFT, you know? And generally it's the latter is the case, but comics is such a small medium that there has to be some level of outreach to get new comic readers in. There just has to. It's too small. So, but that's difficult. I mean, how do you reach new people? You know, it's amazing to me that manga reaches new people all the time. You know, it's growing. So it can be done for sure.
Yeah. Actually, the manga thing doesn't surprise me at all. You know, there were plenty of popular subgenres of comics through the 70s, and it's really in the 80s when everything went cape and cowl. And that's why now we just think of comics as superheroes. Whereas before, you know, people would talk about Westerns or war comics and this and that. I think those people are still there, you know, not necessarily the same ones who were alive in the 70s, but there's still that audience that would potentially buy American comics, but there's nothing for them to buy. You know, if you look at stuff by the big two and even Image, some of it's okay, but there's a lot that's like, you know, where's, other than like Archie, which has gotten weird over the years, where do you find like a romance comic, you know, something that's a little bit more aimed at girls? So to me, it makes sense because manga has all of those stories. And what do we see? People are buying. And the manga audience is about 50-50 men and women.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and it's to think that I don't know, it just it's weird how the industry sort of just limited itself. And I know that superheroes were popular, and so they're chasing the superhero money, but it's funny because that's what the movie industry is doing right now too.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, for me, I'm like, I'd love to just see an action movie. I'd love to just see a comedy, like, you know, just like a fun blockbuster that has nothing to do with superheroes. That sounds great right now, you know, and there's an audience out there for it for sure.
Have you, by any chance, ran across a woman named Magic Gal Media? She's doing an indie comic called Black Rhapsody.
I don't think so. And if I should, I'm so sorry. I might have forgotten names.
She's an interesting one to really look at. She describes the book as like if H.P. Lovecraft met Gem and the Holograms, and it's an interesting concept. But the really interesting thing about her is I'm in a DM group and she's in there, and she's like all the time she's going on like every single show you've ever heard of. Like she's going to people who don't have shows in the comic genre. And for her initial sign up list, she had about 650 people for her first comic out the door. No any work in previous genres or novels or anything like that. It's like, holy crap. And I've had her on twice. Both times were not great episodes, but they're there if anybody wants to watch them. She's a great person though. I really like her. Just
Yeah.
we didn't work together well, but and I was asking her about it, and she's like, "Oh, well, I used to be like a social media marketer." So she was like really good with using all the hashtags on Twitter, and she really went out and analyzed and said, like, well, where are people, and where are the people who will spend money on entertainment? And geez, for a first comic, I mean, 650 is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, and part of that is you got to think about how do you make it accessible to somebody that hasn't read comics, or maybe it's like, well, I read Garfield a long time ago when I was a kid or something, and they're not going to know like talking points. I struggle with that too. Like, if I go on a channel, am I going to talk about crowdfunding the whole time? I mean, most people don't care about that. Like, it's again such a niche audience that you're talking to, so that's difficult. But I think, I mean, it'd probably be worth it. I should really sit down and identify what kind of other YouTube channels are out there, what kind of other just areas of interest that people might think that Downcast is cool or Dracula is cool. So I think it'd be worth the effort. It's the effort.
Yeah, I think a lot. One of the things that was interesting to me is she identified the TTRPG hashtag, which stands for tabletop role playing game, which I do a lot of Dungeons and Dragons role playing stuff on this channel. And it's one thing I was noticing, like those guys, they love fantasy, they love science fiction, and they don't mind spending money on their hobbies. And I've said to people over the last couple of years, like, hey, why don't you go find some channels that are more oriented towards that, it'd be a new audience. But for some reason, people in the indie comics industry just don't seem interested for some reason.
There's definitely a tendency to oh, this works, and like just get precious about it, like this is the only way to do things. And so you have it, there's the orthodoxy, you got to stick to it. And that's probably how comics has been for a very long time, really. But it's not, I don't know, like everybody starts somewhere.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, I don't know. That's definitely, it's interesting when I think about mainstream superheroes. Lots of people love Spider-Man, and I'll bet you that most of those people never read a Spider-Man comic, but they love Spider-Man. Yeah. And so there's something with characters, and I was having this conversation with Peter earlier today about how do you get people excited about your characters, and they'll want to read about them, but ultimately it comes down to the characters and how interesting those characters are, because they'll transcend the comic book itself. And there's no easy answer to that. If there was, I'd be pumping out, big blockbuster IP all the time. But it's an area that you need to focus on. I need to focus on. Yeah, definitely overlooked too much.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I do find a lot of other groups out there who, if they find the story compelling, they're more than happy to spend money on a comic. Like it's not the same as when we were younger and like comics are for kids. I think that stigma is somewhat gone. It's just people don't see, like, you got to put cool stuff in front of their faces, and you got to make your case of like why your characters are cool, like Dracula.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good segue.
So any final thoughts about Dracula? And
yeah, so I'll just say that it's 100% complete. Interior art's done. It's actually already at the printer. We're moving forward printing it, and so it should be a fairly quick turnaround. I'm expecting to be able to start shipping it in August.
Nice.
So hopefully nothing goes wrong, but it so far is looking on track. It's a totally new take on Dracula. So this is the main character is John Harker here. His life is absolutely turned upside down when his new brother-in-law is arrested for simply threatening to blow the whistle at his new job. And so John Harker's called in as the brother-in-law with a law degree to try and fix things. And he's immediately sucked into the world of Dracula. Super fun. My first horror comic book. And I'm really excited for everyone to read it. So if you haven't backed it, please do so. I really appreciate everyone that supported the book.
It definitely looks fun. I have backed it myself, so I can't wait to get it.
Thank you.
All right. So you will be on later on Eric Weather's channels for the CG team?
Yeah, so we're on in less than an hour. We'll be on with the CG team.
All right. So anyone left in the chat, go check that out for more Clint. And so I myself, the week of too many streams continues tomorrow. Ty, the comic guy, will come on to talk about the Undying Chronicles, Eyes of Red and Purple. Friday at 5, I've got Peter Samedi. He's coming on to talk about Cryptid King. And that's at 5. And at 6:30, I will be appearing on Gamma World with on the Dungeon Delvers channel. Saturday at a to be determined time, Nerds of the Round Table returns. It's a geek show where we talk about various geek related items, but not a specific genre, not specifically comics or role-playing games, but geekdom in general. On Monday, Tim Lim will be here to talk about the Soul Finder X Common America X Black Hops crossover, and maybe another guest with him as well. We'll have to see.
Good stuff.
All right. So thank you everyone for coming, and we'll see you next time. See you tomorrow, hopefully.
Bye, everyone.